Hello, everybody, and welcome again to Procrastinator's Pitstop. We always have amazing guests, but we have another amazing guest for you today. Jon Coogan is an accomplished author, entrepreneur, and seasoned professional with over 20 years of experience in high pressure roles. In his book, Strength in the Storm, Jon shares powerful strategies for enhancing focus and resilience, drawn from his personal journey and expertise in leadership and personal development. Jon, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Excited to be here. So I know we've been planning this for a little while and really excited to talk about procrastination and a bit of the journey that I've been on. So thanks for having me.
For sure, and we're going to dive right into that. But before we do like to have a little icebreaker on the show. And today's question for you is, which cartoon character do you resonate with the most and why?
That is a difficult question. I think the one I'd go for, and this is a bit of an out there suggestion, but it's a Tasmanian devil. And a reason I'd go for Tasmanian devil is very much just burst of energy, get an idea, run with it, go a little bit manic. And I think it's really about that topic we're talking about today, procrastination. I think over the years, I've managed to get very good at stopping procrastination, overcoming all those hurdles which leads to procrastination. So when I get an idea, that's it, run with it, and a little bit of a whirlwind, cause a bit of a mess, but we'll go ahead and get those plans into practice.
For sure. Well, I mean, we're human beings and we're messy to begin with. So, there's nothing wrong with a little mess here and there.
Exactly. So yeah, hopefully it'll get some fruition and a bit of clarity by the end of it. But yeah, certainly in those early stages, quite nice just to have an idea and run with it and see what happens.
Very good. So, Jon, why don't you give us a little bit about your background, your journey, and how you got to be where you are today?
Certainly. I've bounced around quite a lot growing up. I've come from a large family, so I have brothers, stepbrothers, stepsisters, half-brothers, half-sisters, and quite a large family, so quite a few people to compete with, both for time and attention. And I did bounce around quite a lot. So I started working in computing and financial services, doing upgrades for people, selling computers and electronic gadgets. Ended up moving into financial services where I worked on my financial planning certificates. And about 18, 19 years old, I decided to make the move to London. So I moved up to London and worked again in financial services, following just the job I'd landed in, really. It wasn't any plan. And while I was in that company, I started combining it with some of the IT background I had and ended up being an IT manager at 23 years old in Chelsea and Westminster. And it was very interesting job. It was good money. It was quite an exciting place to be 20 plus years ago. And I got to the stage where I just didn't feel fulfilled with what I was doing. I was working a lot of hours. I was getting good money for it, but it did feel like it was making a lot of rich people more money. And I thought there's got to be more to life than what I was involved with. And at that stage in my life, it's 2003, and I went into policing. Was in police service for a long time. I felt that's more aligned to what I want to do, helping people, trying to make an impact in society. And certainly in policing, I did learn a lot of skills, and it did lead to having to make decisions fast, having to weigh up options, having to look at all the different options and what the risks are, and make snap decisions. And that's where I've built up a lot of my decision-making skills, really. And I had a few tragic things happen in my life personally. So I was in policing, and my little brother was 10 years younger than me, and he passed away very suddenly while he was away in Thailand. And that's definitely a turning point where it did make me start to reevaluate my life again. So I had the big change going into policing, thinking I wanted to do more for society, and had another change now where I was a little bit lost. And that's really where my entrepreneurial journey started. I can go into that in a lot more depth, and I'm sure we'll probably touch on it a bit more, but it did make me think, what do I want to do? Where are my priorities? Do I want to be away with work so much? And I started a gym equipment company. So from the gym equipment company, I'd seen the benefits that I got from going to the gym, from working out, from exercise. And it was just giving me a space to escape from all the thoughts that was being thrown around my head, whether it was guilt of not being able to be there for my brother, or if it was just a way to avoid sinking into depression. And I'd seen all those benefits that I was getting from it, so decided specifically to go into gym equipment. And that was going really well. We grew, I think, to about £25,000 a month turnover within a matter of months. It was being very successful, really happy with the progress. We were starting to get noticed and starting to have some big companies look at us. And that's when COVID hit. Massive challenges, not just for the gym industry, which of course you had to be in person, but across the world. So there was so many challenges, whether it was the cost of materials going up, shipping costs more than quadrupled in that time. Gyms obviously closed, and there was a lot of challenges. And we started to pivot the business, doing a few other areas, whether it was competitions that we were doing online. We ended up, as we came out of COVID, incorporating some gyms under our brand. And again, gets to another point in my life. I thought I'd get the freedom from being an entrepreneur, from running business. I thought that's going to give me my time back, but I was still working those weekends, still working long into the evenings, and just never really had any free time. So I decided to leave that business. And ever since then, I've really been trying to follow some of my passions. So we've mentioned a few things already. So my book that is out, Strength in the Storm. I've got a podcast as well, which is Mindset Mavericks. And I have an e-commerce tech business, which is about to launch in about 8 weeks' time. So yeah, quite a few things going on, and quite a few lessons I've learned both through business and through life over the last 20 plus years.
Excellent. That is certainly an interesting story, an interesting background. Thank you for sharing with us. So just taking all that into consideration, how do you define procrastination personally, and what does it meant for you in your journey?
Sorry about that. I might need to just have my TV blaring in background. I think procrastination is often misinterpreted. I think often it's seen as being lazy, as being putting off decisions, deferring decisions, and that might be the case. But often it's not actually about that at all. It is about trying to avoid the uncomfortable. It's about fear of being judged, fear of not being able to accomplish what you've got your heart set on. And I think it's very much misplaced where our energy is focused on when we talk about procrastination. And there's a lot of fear around not being able to achieve your dreams. It's about what people are going to think of you. It's also about not knowing where to start. So I think procrastination for me is definitely more about fear and about expectations and being lazy, which is often portrayed.
And what's your secret sauce for overcoming procrastination?
I think there's probably a few go-to strategies, really. One of those strategies is, again, it's actually trying to think, who is the person I want to be? And it's trying to remove yourself from that decision making. It's having to think about, what would the person I want to be, what would they do? And by removing it from yourself and trying to put it onto a third party perspective, you're able to just jump into things a lot easier. But I think there's a number of things that we can take from it. Also reframing the task as an experiment. So if you're approaching a task as though it is a fail or a success, then there's a lot more pressure on you. Try and reframe that task. It's an experiment. You're going to set out, try and see what happens. You're going to put your energy into it. If it doesn't work how you expect, then that's not a failure at all. It's just part of that process of running an experiment. All you do is adjust, keep moving one step in front of the other. I think that's one of the biggest barriers to actually making those decisions and stepping your foot over the line. So yeah, I think that's one of my go-to strategies for it.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense, and it's fairly easy to implement. Obviously, it would maybe work better if you had like a friend to bounce it off, or somebody you trust to bounce it off, or do you find it's just on your own that you can just do that?
I think some accountability is definitely helpful. I think sharing those ideas and actually surrounding yourself with the right people. As I said a few minutes ago, one of the biggest things to stop implementing your ideas is fear. And if you've got people around you that are going to reinforce that fear and tell you can't do that, that's not going to work, that's going to reinforce all those fears that are already causing those barriers to get the action done that you want to do. So it is surrounding yourself with the right people who are supportive, who are encouraging, who's going to pick you up, who's going to help and give you back constructive advice and not be critical. So I think the people around you is really important. And there's also something called the Zeigarnik effect. I don't know if you've heard of this effect at all, but that's the effect that once you've actually started something, it's a lot more difficult for your brain to let go of it. So sometimes it's just actually getting started, whatever that might look like. And you can tell yourself, I'm going to start the project. I'm going to spend 2 minutes on it. That's all I'm going to do. It's an easy way to start, an easy entry to get started. Just give yourself a 2-minute time limit. That's all you're going to do. And there's one of two things that happens. And one of them is once you've started something, your brain keeps that in the back of your mind. It's hard to let go of. You'll keep going back to it. And it just means that you're focused on that a little bit more. Once you've started something, it's a lot more difficult to let it go and forget about it. So that's one of the things that can happen. The other thing that happens as well is once you've done 2 minutes of something, you're actually a lot more likely to continue doing it. The biggest hurdle is actually starting something. And it's the same whether it's in the gym. For example, if you start to work out, it can be really difficult to step foot outside your door. You get home from work, it's late in the evening, it's getting dark and cold, and it's difficult to get started. But as soon as you've got into that gym, you've started your warm-up, that's it, you know you're going to finish.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I wish that would work with cleaning up the leaves, but no, I'm still very good at that one. 2 minutes of raking it up. Nope, I'm done. It's not done. I go back inside. I'm like, no, but it's a little bit different. But yes, the whole a person in motion stays in motion unless acted upon an external force, and if there's stays at rest tend to stay at rest unless acted upon by external force or whoever that went, right?
Exactly that. So it's just making sure those barriers to entry are low, keep them low, encourage yourself to get started, whether it's just spending 2 minutes on it. And like I said, I have one of two effects. Once you've started, you're a lot more likely to continue with that task. Or if you have started, it's hard to walk away from the task and forget about it. For example, if you're going to start a business, you can think about that business or have that idea, and you can have it for months and months and even years. I think there's, for example, with my book, I've thought about that for a long time. But as soon as you've started that 2 minutes, even if you put it down, it's going to be hard to forget about that. It'll keep coming back to you until you do continue it and gain momentum. And then once it becomes a habit to start doing 2 minutes of that every couple of days, that starts to build until you eventually do accomplish your tasks.
Right. And just going back here, I know that you have a background in technology as well. Do you use any tools to help keep your day scheduled and on track?
I do use a few. I think the one that I'd probably go to most is called Trello.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very good tool that me and my team use. And it's just to, again, it's around that accountability. It's putting it out there, what you're going to achieve, assigning tasks to other members of your team and to yourself, and having that publicly accountable. Everyone can see that task. They can see the progress you're making with it. And I think that's the main reason I'd use Trello. And it's just trying to keep that certain amount of pressure, which can be a good thing, on, and to keep yourself accountable. It's sharing that goal with people, letting people know what your aims and objectives are, and having that pressure to actually have an end goal in sight.
Okay, yeah, that's a pretty good tool. Just talking about technology too, though, sometimes we're inundated with it, right? We get notifications from WhatsApp, we get notifications from Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, so how do you personally keep all those notifications sort of in line while you're trying to do something?
There's actually a study recently which just shows that even having a mobile phone in front of you in the same room as you can reduce your attention span by about 40%, which is significant. And I think one of the things that I definitely adhere to is making sure I have time without my phone. Put it away, turn it off, put it in another room, and just make sure that you haven't even got access to it. You don't think about it. One of the problems that people have now is that there's just no expectation to be bored anymore. there's always something else to be doing. There's always, as you say, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. It's just never-ending access to whether it's entertainment or news, and so many things to keep our brains occupied. And we don't get much time just to sit and be bored and be in your thoughts. So that's something that I definitely do every single day, and make sure I do schedule that time in. And even if it is just saying an hour before bed, put that phone away, not going to use it, going to have time, sit with your thoughts, go through it. And it's where you can actually try and overcome some of those objections and reasons why you are procrastinating. It's just actually having that time to think about it and how you can overcome those barriers to entry to getting what you want done.
Oh, no, for sure. And especially just, turning the phone off or putting it in another room for sure, just because a lot of times we can, and it's designed this way. It's designed this way on purpose. They're designed to get you to stay on the platform for as long as possible. So it makes sense that, you want to sit there for 30 seconds, and they do 30 seconds to 90 seconds so that you'll go to the next one. Because if it's longer, then there's more of a chance that you'll say, oh, this is boring me now, I'm just going to go. So they definitely do. I mean, they're very good at their job, but I think that they're being a little bit detrimental in some respects, because we're just encouraged to sit there and swipe all day.
Exactly. And it's even with TikTok, I believe the number now is 3 seconds. If you haven't got somebody's attention in 3 seconds, they're going to swipe. So that's how instant it is now, just to try and get people's attentions, and how difficult it is to try and get focus from anyone now, both personally, people around you. And it's just so many distractions. So I definitely recommend having space and having time, whether it's to meditate, to journal, whichever way it is that you do, but just to process your thoughts and get things down on paper and actually work out some of those issues that we just don't seem to have time for anymore.
Yeah, the going to journaling and writing things down is it's a good way, and it actually reinforces it too, because as you're writing it down, you're having to think about it, you're having to process it.
Exactly. So it's getting things down on paper, and just the process of writing it down, like say you get some clarity in your thought. You actually have to think about how you're going to word it. You're working out what are the barriers, what is it that's stopping me from doing it. And I think just writing stuff down on paper it's a way of purging your brain. And sometimes that's all that's needed. Once you've got it out into the open, you've put it out there, you can forget about it and move on. And you just get a bit of clarity in that moment. And I think that's quite an important step, just to get things out into the world, whether it's speaking to a person, say journaling, whichever method works for you, because it's going to be different for everyone.
Yeah, well, and actually, and that sort of segues into another question I had. When you were writing your book, I mean, you know what they say, right? 95% of writing a book is procrastination, and 5% is writing.
Yeah.
How true did you find that in your own process?
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that I adhered to when I was doing that book was just do it, no matter how bad it is, whether it's going to be a polished, finished version, which is never going to be the case on your first time of trying, but just get things out on paper, put down your thoughts. You can get that clarity a bit later. You can go back over it. You can edit. You can have other people looking at it, but get those thoughts down on paper, get your ideas out there, and then you can refine the process. And that's where a lot of people do stumble now, procrastination. It's trying to think everything needs to be perfect before you start. And there's never going to be a perfect, but the only way you're going to make it better is by starting. So don't aim for perfect, aim for good, get it out there, refine it as you go, whatever it might be, whether it's business ideas, whether it's a life decision about where you're going to move to or which job you're going to take next. But just start the process, refine as you go. Don't wait for perfection, because it's not going to come. And that's okay.
So, for you, what was your biggest challenge when it came to writing your book?
I think the biggest challenge was getting everything into some kind of order. So where I was getting everything down on paper, I was quite happy with a lot of the ideas I was coming out with, and a lot of the concepts and topics that I wanted to speak about. But then it's just putting some structure around it. But I found it was a lot easier to get that structure. If you've got your ideas, say, you can start thinking, how does it fit? How can I relate that to one idea over here on the left? How can I relate that to the idea on the right? But when you're trying to do that without the content to begin with, that can make it very tricky. So yeah, I think a lot of it was getting some structure, but I found that getting those ideas down onto paper enabled me to actually refine it as I was going.
And they say that writing is a very it's a process that is very good in terms of self-discovery. Would you say that you really learned anything I don't know, extraordinary about yourself during the process?
I think I really did. I think some of the things that I learned was looking back at who I am now, but it's really that why am I like that? And that's come from a number of places. One example that I can think of that comes to mind straight away is I'm very much hot on fairness, on equality, on justice. And looking back now, it's only from doing that self-reflection, writing the book, that I've actually discovered where that came from. And this is going back maybe 30 years now, and to a specific incident that happened in school where I witnessed a girl being bullied. She was being picked on. I witnessed her being spat on. It was an awful thing to witness. And I do recall at the time I didn't do anything. I was a 12-year-old kid at school. It's all those thoughts of not wanting to be the next victim, not wanting to be picked on myself, not feeling like I can make a difference. But witnessing that is something that still has stayed with me, and I still think about that person now and wonder how they're getting on. And it's only now that I've realised that my journey into law enforcement and my desire to make sure that everyone's looked after and cared for and everyone gets justice and that I want to stand up for people has all stemmed from that one incident. And it's crazy to think that 30 years later after that, it's only now that I've discovered where it's all stemmed from. And I think there's other experiences over the years too. And I've mentioned already my little brother passing away and some of the things that's taught me. And again, looking back, you can start to see one of the things I do now, for example, is being a business mentor for the UK government. I'm on one of their schemes. And it's just wanting to help other people, wanting to see other people who are struggling and do what I can because I have it within my power to make life easier for other people. And that is, again, something that stemmed from my little brother, not being able to help him at the time, knowing that he's passed away, really know exactly what happened. But I want to make sure that if there's a possibility I can help somebody out, then I'm going to be able to do that.
No, I mean, we always tend to forget that there's two main camps right now, right? There's kind of service to self, and then there's service to others. And what's interesting is that the service to others camp generally, not always, but generally they tend to be a little more successful than the service to self. Sir, I'm not saying there's not cases of service to self out there that aren't phenomenal as well, but the service to others I think is often overlooked. And take care of yourself or take care of your clients, and they'll take care of you, right? And it also goes back to kind of this argument. Recently I saw it on Netflix, survival of the fittest versus survival of the friendliest. And the examples that they gave for survival of the friendliest were dogs and emperor penguins, right? And so it makes sense, right? The friendlier you are, the more interactions you have, the more likely somebody will be to take care of you and pass that on, right? And with the penguins, if you're not friendly, you're going to freeze because you have to be in that group, right? So it was very interesting to see that.
Yeah,
that sort of correlation.
I think that's fascinating. I think one of the things that people don't realize is just how much you get personally from helping other people and how much you learn. Just the process of teaching somebody a new skill, you actually learn so much about yourself and about that skill as well. So it's definitely got so many benefits.
So what would you say is aside from actually helping people or getting somebody that major change that you help to initiate, what's your favorite part about what you do?
It really is the journey, which might seem a little bit stereotypical or just like a buzzword, but it is that journey, actually seeing changes. Example, what I love is meeting people. I love hearing people's stories and finding out what's made that person who they are today. And I think one of the analogies I think of is if you were going to take, for example, I'm in the UK, in near London, and I could quite easily jump on a plane and go to Barcelona. But what's going to be a better journey? Doing that, trying to fast track your way to Barcelona, success, to money, or is it actually getting in the car, driving through England, driving through France, driving through Spain, stopping at all the little taverns, finding all those scenic locations, looking out into the mountains, meeting all those people on the route, and that's the one that makes you more fulfilled. That's where you get your joy. That's where you feel energized, and that's the way I see it. I think you can use the analogy of that as being a plane journey can be trying to fast track your way there, thinking about yourself, focusing on money, focusing on the end goal, whereas actually the journey, doing the process, meeting people, that's the real joy in life, I suppose.
I think you hit the nail right on the head there. I've often talked to other people about this too, that there's been a couple of movies as well that I used to kind of illustrate the point. When we first start out, when we first start growing up, society pegs us into some version of, what I call the American dream, which has totally been, ripped asunder, right? Because before it was all about, having a house, family, little white picket fence, security, good friends, family. And then somewhere along the line, it became about, how rich can I get? How fast can I get it? And, how much can I get? And this is reflected a lot even in, the movie itself wasn't bad, but there's the movie with Will Smith, In the Pursuit of Happiness. They really should have changed the title of that to In Pursuit of $1 Million because that's what he was doing, right? And to some extent, we're all guilty of that because we need money to survive. It's a reality, right? But if we do it in a way where that's all that we're doing, even coming from personal experience, we just find out that in the end, it's not really what we wanted. We've just been sold a bill of goods from, wherever those ideas come from, society, right?
Exactly, yeah. And it's, as you said, the pursuit of money isn't what makes you happy. I think money can give you the freedom, which means that can help your happiness, but it's not going to give you the happiness. And it is definitely the journey, and it is focusing on the present time, focusing on the moment, what you're experiencing, and not trying to focus too much on the end goal. And as you've mentioned, there's, for example, I think athletes are one of the best examples of it, that many athletes will get a gold medal, they'll excel at their sport, reach a pinnacle, but once you're there, what's next? And a lot of these high-performing athletes do go into depression because there isn't anything after that. There's nothing else to focus on. So what do? I think it's by being present, focusing on what you're doing day in, day out. That's where you're going to get your happiness from.
So focusing on the present moment, sort of the journey and the people that you meet along the journey, and that's the way to really feel fulfilled. Is that right?
I'd say so, exactly, yeah. So yeah, I've run a number of businesses now. I've been very successful in some of them, not so much in others. And it is always just actually that process of starting a company, starting to build a team around you. And it's those relationships which makes you happiest.
Just speaking about that, you've had lots of successes and you've really done a lot of different things. What would you say is next for you? Where do you see yourself in the next year?
I've mentioned already, I've got a podcast which started recently called Mindset Mavericks. And that is very much because I'm passionate about people. I love hearing about people's stories and how they got to where they are. So I've got some amazing guests on there, and I'm trying to build that all the time, whether it's, for example, Tony Robbins has had a firewalking specialist at all of his events for 20 years, and I've had him on recently. I've had other people who've suffered with alcohol or drugs addictions and have massively changed their life around, and I love hearing those stories. So I'm certainly trying to build that at the moment and trying to share people's stories as wide as possible. And I've mentioned I've also got a tech business. So one of the things I've done through mentoring is been connecting with a lot of other business professionals. People are looking to begin their entrepreneurial journey. And I can't help myself sometimes. I've got speaking to a couple of people I've been mentoring, and we've decided to go into business together. So that's going to be coming out in about 8 weeks. I'm not going to say too much now because there's lots of work going on in the background, but it should be launching in about 8 weeks. And yeah, just probably more books. And just see what happens. I'm always open for ideas. I tend not to plan too much and like to be open to suggestions and just see what opportunities present themselves, and then just be ready to not procrastinate and crack on with it. I think one of the things...
Well, sounds like some very interesting things here. We're going to have to, I think what we'll have to do is we'll have to invite you back 8 weeks from now and see what happened.
Yeah, it'd be fantastic. Be able to share a bit more about what's happening, what's going on behind the scenes. I think there's probably one other tip I'd like to share on procrastination as well, which you've not spoken about yet. And that is really just gamifying whatever it is that you want to achieve. So one of the little tips that I could use is think of 10 things that you like doing, whether it's going for coffee at a local cafe, going for a trip to the cinema, getting a favorite treat. Just get 10 of these different things, write them on bits of paper, screw them all up and put them in a jar, and tell yourself that after 30 minutes working on whatever it is, you're going to choose one of these out of the jar. A random having these different ones randomized, you're more likely to actually finish a task. It's actually gamifying what you're doing. You don't know what's going to come up next. It's quite exciting. Reach in, pick out something, you don't know what it's going to be. And psychologically, you're more likely to do a task if you haven't specified what the actual result is from doing it. So if you don't know what you're going to get at the end, psychologically, you're more likely to follow it through.
No, yeah, that's a really interesting strategy. I know that sometimes they've done this with chore boards too, where they, I don't know how honest they are with this, but there have been a few YouTubers that have made it popular where they have, instead of a chore board, they put all the chores, they cut them up in little papers and they stick them in a jar. And supposedly they also have other things mixed in there, like, going to the movies or swimming in a pool or whatever it is that they might have. So when they reach in and they're reaching in and they're really looking for those pieces of paper, that have that, those activities they like on it, and they wind up getting dishes, 3 times in a row or something. But it's interesting how that can really motivate you to do things. So yeah, it's a very good tip.
Yeah, I can definitely see how it works. I think one of the things that we've lost as well as adults, as I've talked about, not having much time to be bored, but one of the things we've also lost is that childlike curiosity and playfulness that you have as a child. And little tips like that does bring some of that back. And it's just keeping curious minds, keeping playful. And particularly procrastination, there's not much procrastination with a child. If they want to touch something, if they want to pick something up or find out what something tastes like, they're going to find out. And it's trying to get back to being a child again.
That's a really good one too. I do the same thing with my own daughter. She says she's bored at school, and boredom, for the most part, boils down to that we feel that we know everything that we need to know. And once we've sort of filed it back there, that's when we start to get bored. And I've actually done a little bit of more research into this and more, sort of practice on myself with this. And it's true. It goes back to it goes back to actually labeling too, interestingly enough. When we label things, and we do this millions of times a day, it's just subconscious. We do it. We look at a tree and tree, it's gone. And then we look at it. Well, how much of your day can you actually remember? This was an interesting conversation. How much of your day do you remember yesterday, Jon?
It's, it's so little. Yeah.
So when I was having this discussion, he said to me, so just go and really look at everything, every single detail you can about things. And it's difficult and it's unnatural to us because when we're going about our day, if we just look at something very quickly, we're automatically doing this. We're just labeling it. That's the sofa. Nope, it's out. Oh, that's the dog. Nope, it's out. And it's true. You don't really, the things that you can really recall easily are the things that you took the time to actually look at without labeling it or judging it or kind of dismissing it. So That childlike curiosity is always my favorite question. Is if I'm feeling bored now, and I've tried it a few times, and it seems to work pretty well. Well, what am I missing?
Yeah, so just take another look and really,
Um,
really take it in. And that's one of the things I love about macro photography. It's looking at things in a different way, looking through a new lens, and just trying to see the wonder in stuff that you used to as a child.
yeah, it's very. I think it's a very powerful thing that we just need to do. If we just sit there and understand that we don't know everything, then we find that we're bored a lot less, which is interesting. Because I always thought it was, take something like old articles on a farm. I think when I was in the 8th grade, we always went out to those places where they taught us about the pioneers and those tools, and it was like, oh, boring. And then it's like, well, I don't want to know about this little butter churner or like it. It's because we thought we understood it, right? But if you say,
Yeah,
oh well, how did they use it, and you find that you're at least a little bit less bored.
yeah, yeah. I think probably a final thought for me really on procrastination is just for people to have a bit more self-compassion. And it's often the fear and self-criticism which will stop people from doing things, or thinking you're not worthy, or thinking you're not capable. And it's just trying to remind yourself to speak to yourself as you would to your best friend. And what advice would you give your best friend if they're thinking about doing something they're a little bit afraid of or a little bit reluctant to do, but they want to do it? What advice would you give to your friend? And try and give yourself the same advice.
And it's true. We don't. We're often our own worst critics, and we say no to ourselves more than we do to other people. So that's some good insight right there too. Well, we are coming up pretty close to the time here, John. Were there any questions you felt maybe that I should have asked that I didn't ask, or any topics maybe that we should have touched on but we didn't touch on today?
Don't think so in particular. So no, I was just trying to think. Yeah, no, I think I'm pretty happy. I think you've asked everything that should be asked.
I think we got everything. Okay, so just before we go, what is the best way for our listeners to reach out to you?
So the best places to find me, I've got a website, which is my personal one, joncoogan.com, and that's got links to socials, links to the podcast, to the book, to everything that I'm currently doing. So you can follow my journey, follow what I'm doing. Check me out on mindsetmavericks.co.uk as well, which has got all of the guest information, bios, and just a little bit about what we're doing, what we're coming up next as well.
Excellent. And for all the listeners, don't worry, we will be putting that in the show description so that you'll be able to find it easily. And please do reach out to Jon. In 8 weeks specifically, I want you all to reach out to him and ask him how it's going.
Amazing. Thank you.
Give him a little bit of an extra inspiration there to get it done.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I think the last thing I'd say to your listeners is just remember, any time you're spent procrastinating is a moment you're not going to get back in your life. And you have no idea what opportunity is going to arise out if you just go and do that thing you've been putting off. You never know what's going to come from it. So stop procrastinating, use some of those tips that we shared today, and just see what happens.
Good. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Jon. And to all our listeners, thank you for tuning in to Procrastinator's Pitstop for motivation and inspiration. And if you can't find that motivation or inspiration for yourself today for whatever reason, just go out and try to be that motivation or inspiration for someone else. And we'll see you again next time.
Thank you very much.